Accept our help, the ancient power of the Asmiri.
Hello guys, welcome to another video. Now unfortunately, we didn't get the first batch of transfigured gems last night, so hopefully they'll be coming today. But in the meantime, I've been looking into the new ascendancy options a little bit more, and in particular the Warlock of the Mists. I already talked a bit about the blood magic branch on this ascendancy, but in this video we'll be exploring the Choir of the Damned ascendancy notable. Choir of the Damned grants access to the new Penance Mark ability. So let's take a look at what the skill description says that this new mark does. Penance Mark curses a single enemy, causing them to spawn multiple phantasms when hit. The phantasms will be allies of the marked enemy with the same monster level. They cast a projectile spell which deals physical damage and are immune to curses. You can only have one mark at a time. So this new mark ability will essentially spawn adds on top of the target when the target is hit. And that's going to open up some very powerful options to be explored here with this new skill. One of the biggest questions we all have right now is how much of a cooldown, if any, will there be on spawning these phantasms, as unfortunately we don't have any information in this regard just yet. We also lack information for exactly how powerful these phantasms will be and how much health they'll have, but the assumption here is that they'll likely be the power level of a normal white mob of the level equivalent of the marked enemy. Even without this information though, we can look into some powerful synergies with this new mark skill. Starting with Boneshatter. Boneshatter is a melee strike skill which causes its damage to be an area of effect pulse if the strike stuns the enemy. With additional strikes from Ancestral Cry or otherwise, you'll be able to effectively shotgun the main target, as the additional strikes will hit the summoned phantasms, stunning them, and creating area pulses which will overlap on top of the main target, dealing massive burst damage. This synergy is going to be extremely effective if the cooldown for summoning phantasms is low or non-existent. Next up, the Chieftain's Hinekora Death's Fury notable. This notable grants a small chance for enemies to explode on death for massive fire damage in a large area. Although this one is only a 5% chance, it will be very strong to help burst down map bosses or tanky essence rares when it does proc. Once again, the usefulness of this combination really comes down to how often you're able to summon phantasms. If you're able to summon a lot of them in quick succession, the chances of proccing Hinekora increases massively. But what about the damage when it does proc? Well, if the phantasms summoned by Penance Mark are normal enemies, at monster level 84 they'll have 28,236 health. So a Hinekora explosion would deal 141,180 base fire damage before any relevant modifiers to damage. And if this hit caused an ignite, it would deal 127,062 damage per second over 4 seconds. In a League starter environment where you have lackluster gear, perhaps a 4 or 5 link main damage ability and missing points on your passive tree, this explosion will likely carry your damage against tanky targets, at least until you get stronger. Next up, Sunder. Now Sunder is a slam skill which creates cascading waves towards the target. When this wave hits an enemy, it will create a smaller shockwave which hits nearby enemies for 40% less damage. This is the component of the skill which has always made it great for clearing packs of monsters, but Sunder struggles against single targets. You can use a Hydrosphere to create a single shockwave once every second, which is decent, but with Penance Mark you'll be able to create 3 phantasms which can then be hit to create shockwaves, effectively shotgunning the main target. An attack against a single target with Sunder deals 325% of your attack damage, but an attack against a single target surrounded by 3 phantasms which all get hit will deal 910% of your attack damage as the target gets hit by your main attack and a shockwave from each phantasm. Similar to the Boneshatter synergy, the strength of this combination will be reliant on that unknown cooldown for how often you can spawn phantasms. And up next, another attack skill, Infernal Blow. Now Infernal Blow sits in a similar boat as Sunder in that it's always been great for clearing packs due to its mechanics of making monsters explode on death, which means that the explosion damage based on monster health can carry your damage for a long while even while you have a weak weapon. But once again, it has historically struggled as a single target damage ability. Penance Mark will provide an option to assist in this area. where you'll be able to explode the summoned phantasms with Infernal Blow. This explosion will deal damage to the main target, which will be especially useful in an Ignite setup. Do be aware that the explosion caused by Infernal Blow is secondary damage, which is not affected by modifiers to melee damage. In the Ignite setup, you'll want to focus all of your damage scaling modifiers that will directly boost Ignite, like fire and elemental damage, fire damage over time multipliers, and burning damage. And next up, we've got Flamewood Totems. I just had to put this one in here, as you may remember my thoughts on Flamewood from 3.22's League launch, where I expressed frustrations against certain bosses where they either hit incredibly slowly or in some cases just not at all, pretty much making Flamewood useless in those scenarios. However, the phantasms summoned by Penance Mark are confirmed to use projectile abilities, so as long as you can spawn them to begin with, for example by hitting the boss with something like Shield Charge, then you'll be able to taunt the phantasm to hit your totems, proccing Flamewood, which can then directly hit or ignite Proliferate to the boss. And speaking of Proliferate, next up we've got Proliferation and Chaining. Once again, these are very dependent on how often you'll be able to summon these phantasms, but the Pathfinder's Master Toxicist Ascendancy notable will allow you to proliferate poisons from the phantasms to the boss. There's a lot of potential here with stacking low tolerance cluster passives and Pestilent Strike, where you'll be able to proliferate massive poisons from the dying phantasms onto the main target, and also gain a large amount of damage from the secondary Pestilent Strike debuff, which deals chaos damage over time based on a percentage of the remaining expected poison damage on the dying enemy. Meanwhile, some chaining abilities have a lot of potential too, but are unfortunately very reliant on the spawning rate of the phantasms. And in all of this video, I haven't even mentioned Foul Pact, the ascendancy notable on the Warlock of the Mist which branches off from Choir of the Damned. Foul Pact will make phantasms have a 50% chance to grant a Vow Soul on death, and make them grant 50% increased flask charges. And once again, of course, the power of this notable will lie in exactly how often phantasms can be summoned and killed. If they can be summoned very often, there's the possibility that you'll be able to have much better flask uptime while bossing on ascendancies which don't have access to flask charge generation. But do keep in mind that this is directly competing with the Warden of the Magi ascendancy, which also provides flask charge generation, albeit at the cost of a flask slot. Did I miss any really strong potential interactions with Penance Mark? Do let me know in the comment section below. And what are your plans for the Wildwood ascendancies? Have you found some really strong synergies perhaps? That's going to be it for this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.